What's going on, everyone? I'm Jon Gillin. This, of course, is Silver Sound Guitar. And today I'm going to cover something that I think kind of gets neglected a little bit, and this is legato technique. Specifically, I'm going to be looking at hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, just to be clear, legato is actually something that refers to kind of the sound of something. There's two terms. There's legato with a T, which is an Italian term, and then legato, which is with a D. But the big concept here is that we get an understanding of the smoothness of the playing. So really what it is, it's the difference between, say, something with a pick attack and something where we're maybe using slides or hammer-ons and pull-offs. And just to kind of give you guys a good idea of what that sounds like, of course, a lot of us already know this, we already use it, but, you know, this idea of the pick versus a hammer-on and a pull-off. And when we put those together, we can do cool little trill things and create some neat, fluid ideas based on these techniques. So I want to clarify something though, because what I see a lot of my students doing with hammer-ons and pull-offs is they treat it more like a lift-off. And instead of really focusing on the idea of the pull-off or really the hammer-on as well, you end up with something that just kind of mutes the string or the note dies on the string. And to give you an example of what not to do, we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at that. The big thing here, when I'm looking at this, if I'm doing a hammer-on, I want to make sure that this finger is going to be nice and flat, that it's going to hit right where I need it to. And it's almost like I want to think about this as a nail that's going to go straight through that guitar, that neck right there, and just puncture it. And you can see it a little bit better over here. What I'm going to do is just nail that right there. And notice the position of my hand. I have to be in a position where I can actually make that sound good. Here's the problem. A lot of times we kind of hold our hands here, we might have our thumb wrapped around here, and the hammer-on kind of ends up like this. And what happens is we end up using the soft part of our finger here instead of really the fingertip, which allows us to make a better sounding note, and it's more accurate. So instead of using that fleshy part where you kind of, you get a little bit of buzz, or it doesn't quite land like you want it to, or you might even, especially with the pinky, I see this a lot, people have to swing, and instead of hitting maybe the note they want to hit, they might go, or they hit the wrong string. So the idea is we want to be in a position where our fingertips can hit exactly the note they want to hit. And to do that, we kind of have to get away from this sort of thing, or see how all of my fingers right here are at an angle. I want to wrap my hand around here and get my thumb so it's a little bit more in the middle of the neck, and then these fingers can lay nice and flat across. Don't worry too much, if your pinky kind of tails out like that, or your index finger kind of rolls that way a little bit. That's fine. That's not really what we're talking about. We're just talking about getting your fingers in a nice even position somewhere here on the neck where you can get these knuckles here. And if I switch camera angles, you can see this a little bit better. Notice that these knuckles right here are going to be out in front of the fretboard just a little bit. Or at the very least, you kind of want to imagine that there's a plane that extends here. And that's going to allow my fingers to sit nice and smooth right there across the fretboard. So really, this kind of ergonomic positioning is really key to being able to put your fingers in the right place. So now that I'm kind of set up there, I'm able to get those hammer-ons nice and smooth. And I can get each finger to do exactly what I want it to do. Next, though, we want to look at the pull-off technique. And the pull-off technique is also something that can be a little bit tricky. So in order to see that, we want to make sure that, of course, I've got that first finger in the position right where I need it. But what's going to happen is this finger here actually needs to pull on that string, pull that string down in order to make that sound. So notice when I do that, you can actually hear that note make a sound. Whereas if I just did a lift off, it's not really the same. I mean, you heard it make a little bit of a sound there, but if I just do that, if I'm here and then take it off, it does nothing. Whereas if I can get that pull off to really do what I want it to, now I can go ahead and hammer it on. And ideally, you want to be able to make that just sound. You can make it sound as loud or as quiet as you can. A goal for your hammer-ons and pull-offs should essentially be that you can make that sound as loud as the note you just picked. And that it's nice and even all the way across. You should also be able to eventually control the dynamics of it. Can you make it quieter and louder as you need to? And that's kind of up to you to develop that, but first start with that actual pulling on the strings. And to do that, I'm going to share a little exercise with you here. I like to start with this kind of chromatic idea and just play that first finger and watch how my pinky is going to do this. Again, I want to bring that finger down into my hand essentially. So what we're going to do is, just to practice that, we're going to bring our fingers to rest on the string below it. Now, once we're playing a song, you're probably not going to do this very often. But the goal is that in order to get those hammer-ons and pull-offs to sound exactly like you need them to, you're going to be able to pull that finger down into that next string, just like that. And so these chromatic, one finger at a time exercises are really good for that. You'll hear what's kind of happening when I get this pinky pulled down. I'm kind of touching that other string. You can hear it make a little bit of noise. That's fine, because the goal is we're just pulling that finger down into the string and we're getting these fingers here to line up. You can do the same thing with your hammer-ons, of course. So, start with maybe picking that first note. And notice what I'm doing here. I'm taking my time. I'm lining up that finger right where I want it to be. Legato technique is really important for helping our left hand build speed and ultimately bringing our left hand and right hand into synchronization. But as we're working on that speed, you'll notice we're also working on the technique here. This technique of getting our fingers close to the fretboard and still being able to make those hammer-ons and pull-offs makes our hand movements more efficient, which of course, more efficient movement means faster speed. Okay, so that first exercise, work on that just hammer-on all the way up, and then do some pull-offs on the way down. It's a nice, simple one. It's not terribly difficult to work your way through. Now, I want to share with you a variation on this, and I'll have tabs for this in the link. So the link's below, definitely check that out. As you're comfortable with that particular exercise, this one is going to change up the fingerings a little bit. And I'm just going to do the first one in the tabs here, and you can vary it up, you can do the pull-offs. I'm going to start with the hammer-ons, but the hammer-ons are really interesting because they're going to force you to work on probably something you're struggling with a little bit, at least most of us do, right? It's going to be that pinky and that third finger and getting them that finger independence while working on your hammer-ons and pull-offs. So let's go ahead and check that out. The first thing you'll notice here is we're going to keep our first finger down right here on that second fret, okay? So on that second fret, and then we're going to hammer on to that fifth fret. So it's first finger to fourth finger, just like this. And then we're going to use our third finger to play the fourth fret. And then we're going to hammer on with the pinky. Now we're going to the second finger on the third fret and hammer on with the pinky again. This is really going to work your pinky, so it'll be good for you. Then you can move it up the fretboard, which is exactly what I have there in the tab. It's the same pattern. 1, 4, 3, 4, 2, 4, 3, 4. And and I'm using finger numbers as opposed to fret numbers there, just to clarify. Of course, you can do similar things with the pull-offs. Check out those other tabs that are in there because that'll be super helpful for you. All right, so now that we kind of have that, just the basic technique of this down, the next thing that I want to talk about is how do we start thinking about using these to build speed? And this is where I think just basic finger alternation helps to develop this a little bit. And what we'll do is we'll just jump in, and I'm just going to start here on the 6th fret because reasons. And all I'm going to do is work on getting this finger to kind of flutter. I still want to be conscious of how I'm doing this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be kind of like flapping my finger like this. But I'm not as concerned about the tone here as I am about just trying to get this to hammer on and pull off as quickly as I possibly can. And then I'm going to move to my 1st and 3rd, and then 1st and 4th. And that's really the first thing that you can do to start developing the finger independence in your left hand and working on that speed with these hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, the last thing that I think is really good for this is when you start doing these different finger patterns, start working them together. So instead of just 1 at a time, now I can do 3 at a time. So for example, 1, 2, 4. And then just kind of work on building up some speed with that. You can do the same thing with your 1st, your 3rd, and your 4th finger as well. So here I am on the 9th fret, and I can go, or the 7th fret, so 9, and then 10 right there. And that idea of just kind of hammer on and then pull off. So you work that a little bit. These are typical scale patterns. They'll kind of help you build up some speed. It's a good way to go. So what I would recommend is starting with that chromatic exercise, move on to 1 or 2 of those hammer-on and pull-off warm-ups where that link is below. What that'll do for you is that'll just kind of help develop the technique a little bit more, and then just go as fast as you can with those different finger patterns I just covered. So what's really great about legato technique is it adds a different dimension to your playing instead of just having everything picked. It's very common, but it also can help build that left hand speed, which of course everybody wants a little bit more speed out of their hands, right? So stay tuned for next time. I am going to have a part 2 on this that you can check out if you subscribe to our newsletter. Link below on that. So subscribe to the newsletter. That'll be out in a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to access that straight away. You'll get tabs with that. There'll be a few more exercises and a follow-up video for that. So at any rate, check us out. If you haven't already signed up for lessons, feel free to give us a shout. Silver Sound Guitar, hit the subscribe button, like all the other fun social media stuff, and I will see you next time.